International.
So.
Gotcha. Nah, I don't think so.
Friendly reminder to everybody that we are broadcasting
Our hearts are getting a little bit.
per state rules, so be aware.
You're scrounging to try to find it, that's what it's. Sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Well, mine better, mine laminated and everything. Name tag.
Right, it is 1 o'clock, so in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Mr. Secretary, do we have quorum?
Yes, we do.
Just for the record, which agencies are not here?
Okay.
Park Hills and Carrollton. Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is discussion and motion on authorization to join the Jefferson Health Plan. So let's start with discussion. We talked about this at length at our last board meeting earlier in the month. However, board members who were present decided that with only a bare minimum of us present as quorum, that it was probably better to have a larger board discussion. That's why it was the request for everybody to be here so that we can have a full discussion and probably get a much more solid result from the board as far as which direction we're going to go. I know for some of you, this is probably going to be the first time you've kind of heard a little bit about this. So if you don't mind, I'll put you all on the spot. If you want to give a brief synopsis of what the request is for Jefferson.
I'll give a 30,000 foot overview, and then more detailed overview I'll let Lisa and Michelle do, but basically the opportunity here is that we join with an organization that is government owned by local governments that join this organization, sit on its boards and participate in its activities. It is basically in its simplest form, a stop loss carrier that says that they will cover you for stop loss on an ongoing basis. Today you have stop loss, you acquire it on your own independently. It operates very much the same way as the way you traditionally buy stop loss, with a few exceptions that are advantageous. And some that, need to be thought about, whether or not you want to move forward on it on. But it's, what it primarily does, it says that if whatever we decide the budget is between Jefferson Health Plan, which is the government organization, and our organization, whatever we decide the budget is in underwriting, let's say that, I'm just gonna make up numbers for the sake of number, say the budget is $1 million. And you fund $1 million under the current arrangement. If you're spend less than $1 million, you keep the $1 million. Everything under the $1 million, you keep whatever's under that million if you didn't spend it all. Under the Jefferson Health Plan, if it's $1 million and you don't spend it all, you keep the difference between that and $1 million. You still own it. If you spend more than $1 million under the current arrangement of your budget, you have stop loss protects you that if you spend about 25% more than that $1 million, you'll be done spending. But that means you might have to go back to your boards, do a call for more money or augment the budget. you guys are in a great place right now at this point in time, but you have enough reserves that if that happened to you under the current arrangement, you'd be able to say, hey, let's go get our reserves and let's spend that and not go to a call because we spent more than our budget. We had a bad year. Under Jefferson Health Plan, if the budget is $1 million and they say it's $1 million, then and you spend more than that, it is still just $1 million. They cover the difference rather than going to your reserves and covering that difference. They say if you spent $1,100,000, we give you the 100,000. So you don't change the budget for that year, and then over the next course of 2 to 3 years, whatever you decide to negotiate, you've got to pay that $100,000 back, but you pay it back in an interest-free situation. So in its simplest terms, what Jefferson Health Plan does as a benefit is to say that whatever the budget is determined to be, then they guarantee that budget for the year, and you cannot blow that budget up because they will take care of it for you. There are a couple other things that are different. One is right now you have your reserves in the bank and you keep your reserves. You would still continue to keep your reserves that you have in the bank today. If you join the Jefferson Health Plan, you'd have your old reserves set over here and you begin building new reserves just under the Jefferson Health Plan. There would also still be your reserves, but they would be held in a separate account because you're now under Jefferson Health Plan. You would then and they would try to have you continue to have a reserves stability program going forward, the same way you have today, just like you have a reserve policy today of how you build your reserves. They're going to want to participate in the underwriting with us to say that you're going to have a reserve policy going forward as well, to where that account would also be just as stable as your present account, right? They also would say under the new situation with Jefferson Health Plan that if you want to have new people join the new pool that you're in essentially, that we would underwrite them. They could come in and they could join. And right now, if they wanted to come in and join underneath the old pool, you're asking them to advance dollars to join. You're saying, give us some reserve dollars up front so that we can join. And a few organizations have decided to do that. Under the Jefferson side of the program, they would say, we would want new members to join, but they'll cover their reserve liability rather than you having to worry about their reserve liability. It'll be their responsibility as an independent organization to get their reserve circumstances up to where they should be. So you're underwritten on more of a collective basis. That's a good thing ultimately, that you're underwritten under a collective basis. Right now, you're over 300 employees. The larger that pool becomes in the future, the more you're underwritten by a larger number. Our goal is always to bid, just because it's more of a paper magic, but it's paper magic. That the number of 1,000 just changes the universe for underwriting statistically. How many cancers you're going to have, how many babies you're going to have. You know, what's the cost of those babies and those cancers? At 1,000 underwriters, and everybody says, yeah, we feel predictability is there, therefore stability is there, therefore the long-term predictability and stability and financial stability of your organization is more manageable over time because you have 1,000, right? So that's the benefit. For instance, the city of Newport joined this program, and they are now independent on their own, state of Kentucky in this program. I'm sorry, in the state of Kentucky, not with the state of Kentucky, in the program. And they would then begin to be a part of the whole underwritten situation for other people that join. Does it mean you're dependent on what Newport does? No, absolutely not. Just that the gravity of underwriting is greater because numbers are blended together. So your reserves are independent still. You still decide your own plan designs. You still decide your own plan designs. You decide who can be a member or not. It's within your old pool. So you can still have people to your old pool if you wanted to. And that's your decision. And you still participate in what the premium would be, but we also have them and their underwriters telling us what the premium should be. So it's another party out there saying we think it should be this. And they have said it would be Cheryl Morgan in your organization and them participating in that. So that is to some degree saying, well, they've got a little more control before now. We don't have that. Since they've got some control, it means we've given up a little bit of control. To be fair about that. And the assets that we have in accumulate, they want to ask us to accumulate those again under the new pool. So if I were to say it, I'm not going to say that they're downsized, but there are things to be considered to decide that's the way you want to manage yourself going forward. So the two biggest things about managing yourself going forward that would be considered different, I'll let you decide whether it's a downside or upside, because I don't have a vote in this, is that am I one another party that is an underwriter and an actuarial organization creating rates for governments, participating in my rate evaluation and deciding what I should pay? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. I can think of good reasons why I'd want that. And I think a couple of reasons why, well, we're doing a good job today, And then I would also say, okay, now you want me to build reserves again, and they would have a reserve expectation that is built up, but it's your money, it's your reserves. I don't have a problem with that, really. I don't think that's almost a neutral situation to me. I still got my old money, and I'm still gonna build my new money, and I use my old money or my new money to offset renewals or whatever I want to do with it's gonna be there for me. So that's really the biggest differences as far as that goes. Then what are the things that are assets that we're gaining are positives? I now don't have to worry about whatever number we come to as far as the budget number, or ever busting that budget. And during the year, I don't have to go get my reserves if I don't want to. I can just say, well, we went over the number and they're going to insure that for us. Then at the end of the year, I can say, hey, you know what? We don't want to pay you back over 3 years to blow up our number. We're going to pay you back now from our reserves, or we'll pay you back over time, and they won't charge us an interest rate. New people want to join. You don't have to worry about collecting additional premium from them in the first year to help them build reserves. You're just going to say, okay, they're going to take the risk on that. So that is the one place where they are actually taking the risk, and they're going to make that entity bear the risk if they blow up their own number. But collectively, as far as how we underwrite things, we get to use the greater number of population blended with our underwriting risk to underwrite our situation. So they have what's called a high claimant pool, and that's just like our stop loss. And they pay the high claimants out of that blended risk pool. Just like today, we go to a stop loss carrier and buy that. So our stop loss insurance today we buy is what?
Stop loss is $85,000.
$85,000. And under the Jefferson plan, it would be
$85,000.
$9,000. So today we go to an independent, I call them banks because that's what they really are behind the scenes is banks. They hold money. And when you need it, they give it out. They give it out because you spent more than $85,000 with somebody. They are for-profit entities. We would no longer pay that money to those entities. Now we just pay this government agency, Jefferson Health Plan. We pay them a premium for the $85,000. The cost of doing business with Jefferson Health Plan and the cost of doing business the way we're doing it today is pretty close to the same.
They said they would honor our 0% increase.
On our 0% increase. We still use MedBen, we still pay MedBen. They still you still own the plan design, still, decide what you want to do there. So they're not involved in that decision. They just underwrite it. Is there anything I missed in that discussion? So since I probably beat this horse to death in trying to be as simple as I can about describing this, just a little more background information. Jefferson Health Plan is originated in Ohio. They're quite substantial in Ohio. They now do business in Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana,
West Virginia.
Michigan. Virginia, right?
No, Michigan.
Michigan, yes. So other states have said we like this idea of states coming together and collaborating on sharing risk, governments coming together and collaborating risk. And so those states that are involved have said, we like this, they've done a good job. It's a fair thing to do. It means you don't have to join the state of Kentucky and be mandated by them. You can still own your own plan. You're literally just sharing your high claim. costs with other organizations. Any questions of myself or Lisa regarding that summation?
So I just wanted to like point out a few quick things. So Jefferson Health Plan is a government agency in Ohio. And they operate across state borders. All of their members are governments or nonprofits, just like we are. And for Kentucky, they've entered into Kentucky. They're finally entering into Kentucky, so they're looking for clients. Right now, they have one, City of Newport. We would be number 2 as a group with them. And once their Kentucky plan got fully up and running, anybody in the state could join. So there would be like another pool. So we're agreeing to join another pool. And we can do that as a board entity. I've already checked with our city attorney. And as a agency created by interlocal agreement, we can enter into another interlocal agreement with another agency. And that's what the Jefferson Health Plan 30-something page document that was emailed out is this is the already approved agreement that the Attorney General has signed off on. So this is what we would actually have to sign and join in order to be a member of their plan. And being a member of the plan, they basically replace our current private stop loss that we buy on the market in exchange for us agreeing to follow the terms in this 34-page agreement. And so that's the purpose of today's meeting, is to decide pretty much if we want to do that.
And I did miss 2 points that have lesser to do with you guys. Well, one is to do with you guys. Why are we even talking about this if the numbers are all about the same? It's a government organization. It's a long game strategy. They would be protecting us. Today, you're 300 and some people in the pool. You've done a fantastic job of managing your situation, that you have adequate reserves and that you have lots, so it means you have cash on hand. I wish that had more to do with me, but really has to do more with the people sitting on either side of me here, that what the heck they're doing and guiding you so that in your cooperation with them. But at 300 people, you're volatile. We get $1 million claim like we have in the community that we happen to be setting in, and the world could be very different in a hurry for you because you have $1 million claim. So even though you're very stable for your size, that's why the $1,000 number becomes important. So in the long game situation, it protects your reserves, protects your premium situation, and treats you like a 1,000-person group, even though you're a 300-person group from a risk standpoint, because it caps at risk. There is one item that just doesn't really have so much to do with you. And it has to do with the fact that it has to do with the fact that you are unique. Jefferson Health Plan normally does not underwrite for groups under 50 employees. They have said that your pool has set an example that they would like to follow, and that they would, for the first time and in the state of Kentucky, allow our team to underwrite for groups under 50. So that means that they would be saying that the entities in Kentucky that only have Blue Cross, United Healthcare, Cigna, or Aetna as an option to them, and you guys as an option in your ad district, would now be an option with them bearing the risk across the state of Kentucky. Who would underwrite for groups under 50. So this would be means that you'd be a part of what's essentially almost a new insurance offering in the state, not only for groups of 50 plus, which they normally are, but also for groups for under 50, as far as for underwriting. That has less to do with you as far as going forward or anything like that in the future, but just to say, hey, you guys have done a good job. I like your example. Continue to follow your example going forward on that situation. Okay, I'm sorry, not.
Yeah, go ahead.
So since we're a newer group and we haven't paid all of our buy-in yet, does that mean we continue the buy-in or we hold that as reserve, what you were talking about, that we need to hold that ourselves?
So because Northern Kentucky Public Entity Board would be joining the new pool as an entity, you still have an obligation to us as the current
So we
set up,
continue that.
continue to pay that. But we don't have to let anybody else in, to our group, into this group. So if another community, even in Northern Kentucky, wanted to join, we could say, you don't have to join us, you can join the pool. And then they would have less control over their rates because then Jefferson would be setting their rates. They would not have access to our current $2 million reserve that we have that's separate from the Jefferson Health Plan reserve. As we build a new reserve inside the Jefferson Health Plan, in the future, we could tap that. But those of us who were here in the beginning, remember, it's really hard to build that reserve the first couple of years in. So we may be transferring portions of our current reserve over to Jefferson to help kind of smooth out those bumps in the road, but we won't know until we get there, right? But as far as like the members that are currently in, yes, we would want, and the current interlocal that we're all in the process of approving, basically would require you to continue to make that payment. And then once you make the payment, you're fully in and you don't have to make that payment any longer. So.
Yes, so Fred, the people around this table, Park Hills and Carrollton, are the only ones that ever are allowed to have access to your original $2 million.
Right, just the jurisdictions that are here have access to that $2 million reserve we have built up over the last 11 years. Unless we as a board vote to let somebody else in that is in the Northern Kentucky Ad District area, because that's the only people we can let in. And then they have to pay the buy-in to us to get access to that reserve. If somebody outside the Northern Kentucky Ad wanted to join, they're just joining the Jefferson Health Plan Kentucky pool that we would be anchoring with Newport, for lack of a better term. And then they would have to deal with Jefferson Health Plan directly on all those issues. Is that a fair?
That is fair. So your assets you currently have are protected from the rest of the pool. They cannot be touched. They cannot be asked for. They are your assets. You act independently with those. Your future assets within the new pool are also your assets, but they are supported by other entities and underwriting and stuff like that in a broader underwriting scheme. Again, why are we even bringing this to your attention when the current dollar situation is pretty much neutral? It is because it is a better guarantee that this pool will be stable in the future. Even if this pool stayed at 300 and some bodies, it'll be underwritten with other entities so that it becomes stable like it's 1,000 bodies. So that if you had 3 bad years back together, it's possible this pool could end. We would want that to happen. I'm not trying to paint. I'm not painting an irrational picture for you. I'm not painting a probable picture for you, but I'm painting a possible picture for you that it has happened. And there used to be multiple pools in Ohio, for example, and there's still a few others, but they all joined together under Jefferson because they had 300, 400, 500 employees. And they were all independent small groups and they had to go back for calls. And they came together and joined. Selfishly, even though I think we could never find anybody as good as this team right here to replace us, we're probably not going to live to 120. Nobody's going to come behind us necessarily. And this would be guarantee the future of your stability of your organization going forward by being a part of a government organization that has your interest.
So got a couple things. The initial year and the renewal for next year, that's kind of the big thing. I know that we, that are in the pool and we have that reserve somewhat protected from that, but can we anticipate, because again, I go back to our first year, we had those 10, and again, I can understand to a certain extent, not really, but kind of what you all told me about that 10-month and the claim lag. And that was the primary reason for our major increase in premiums. We've obviously steadied off substantially since then. So if we take that first year out, we're pretty steady at what, 6 or 7, 8%. So next year, just, is the anticipation that this, just because it's our first year, and I know we don't have the crystal ball, if we have a bad claim year, that's gonna inhibit a lot of this. Or the fact that we may get lower premiums, but we also have that protection of our reserve so we can buy that down to a certain extent. But I just want to see, is the anticipation again, after that first year.
There is a significant difference between your original first year and this new first year. And that is that in your very first year, you all left Blue Cross or United Healthcare for the most part, Humana. And Humana, United Healthcare, and Blue Cross were paying those claims that occurred right up until the day you opened your doors. Those claims didn't hit Humana, Blue Cross, and all that until 3 months after you opened your doors. They were still paying for your claims months after you had left. You're being underwritten right now with those claims that are gonna be paid in this upcoming year and next year. As if they're gonna be paid in that year. There's nobody else paying your claims for you. So that means we don't have what's called a claim lag. So the first year you got, and was described correctly, and I think that's the reason everybody was okay with it, was that you automatically get an increase after your first year because you only paid about 9 to 10 months of claims in a 12-month period. Because even though you incurred them on day one, then you get paid till 2 to 3 months later. So you have a claim lag, it's natural. So you always end up the first year with some cash on hand. You say, woohoo, isn't this great? You got cash on hand. Well, but you still got to pay that money out later. So under the new situation, there's no claim lag to catch up with. It's already there, it's already underwritten in. So I would anticipate that if you have a normal year after this year, you'll have a renewal just like you've had in the past years. And just like you've been building in dollars to build your reserves up in the past, they'll be adding in dollars to build your reserves up in the future. And so if we all came up with the same number going backwards and going forwards, at least, together, the only real difference would be when they finally give you the final number, it's a protected number as opposed to today, it's just a budget number. So now when they say it's $1 million, you can't pay more than $1 million in that year. So to protect you with that million. That's one of the reasons they can bring new groups in, not make them pay the reserves in advance because they're using the assets, all the entities together to say they'll advance them the money rather than have them pay the money. Same thing for you. You're going to be at $1 million. You either pull it from the reserves that you have, if you wish to pay it back, or you'll just pay it back over time, interest.
So Lisa, the contract that Jefferson Health plan is offering is the 2412.
Just like what we're on
So I don't know if you remember that. The 2412 means that it's picking up claims that were incurred prior to. So it's just like other stop loss contracts that we've had for the years. That after that first year was just a 1212, so it was incurred and paid in that first year. And then that second year, what made it more expensive is because you had to buy it at 2412 because you not only had to worry about claims that were incurred and were coming in, but you also had those leftover claims. So you had to make sure you were protected. So this plan, the stop loss plan from Jefferson Health Plan is a 2412, just like all the other ones that we bought after year one. So, but your concern, I understand completely, especially since you were here since day one, you understood that first year of self-funding, you had that, but this is a little bit different than the first year self-funding. This is it's still that 2412 contract.
Another thing that's different, Paul, is that going into this pool originally, we had no claims experience. You were all small, fully insured plans, and we had individual health questionnaires, but we didn't really know how your claims were gonna run. But you were a mature self-funded plan now with tons of claims experience under your belt. So it's a lot easier for the underwriters to get.
All will be taken into account.
Yes, right.
So.
Yep.
So we're
Risk
coming
of
in.
exposure is much smaller now than it was.
Quick question, well, one of many, but let's say we decide to go to JHP, right? And then we've been told if you give 6 months notice, then you can get out and take your money, or have the claims paid out. If we would go back to HCC saying, more than likely it's gonna be like a 2-year, more than likely, right? We wouldn't just be in it for 6 months and we would wanna see what that renewal would be. So in all likelihood, it'll be probably a 2-year commitment. If we go back to HCC, are we gonna start from like lasers and, the potential increase in premiums and things like that? Will we be starting from ground zero, or would they take into account that we had a history with them?
Well, I guess it probably depends on how much time has elapsed. I mean, if, you know, if they're familiar with your claims experience and they haven't, lost a bunch of money on you, they may be willing to, you know, give you more consideration as a new client. They're not obligated to offer the no new laser rate cap after your next renewal, so even right now, they could say at your 2026 renewal, we're not gonna offer that contract in 2027. Whereas with JHP, they never laser.
They say they never did, but on the sheet that we got last week, or last month, whenever it was, they said that it says here that the proposal assumes a laser on one of the claimants for $400,000. So I wanted to make sure also that, but I also see that it's no new lasers. No, it says a no laser policy renewal.
Yeah, they removed
Then
that.
then at the bottom, they had that 400,000. If
Yeah.
they remove that, then that's good. but
Yeah, they're,
It was a significant.
yes, they removed that after some.
It's common practice that when you're new with them, even HTC, if you came in new with HTC, they might say, okay, this first year, because you're new, we want to laser you, this person. But after this laser, there'll never be another one until the renewal of that situation, which is 26. So what they did is they went ahead and removed it. So they're operating like any other stop loss carrier would. But going forward, historically, they've never offered a laser once you're in. And that's just one of the practices. It is kind of hard. In one hand, they want to try to operate it like a regular business. And you guys get this more than others, like a regular business, make sure everybody's assets and margins are protected, but at the same time, they're nonprofit government. You know,
Who's the member in this?
That's a great question. That was actually on my list.
Okay.
Who
Who knows the answer?
Yeah, I know. So if we join, would we join as the Northern Kentucky Public Entity Joint Health Insurance Board and have one vote on their board, or, and then would they be billing us, like, you know, the board for the premiums, or are they gonna be billing all 17 jurisdictions individually?
I'm confident enough with the answer that I'm gonna give you an answer, but then I'm almost like want to step out there and make a phone call to double check my answer. You know, but you'd be one entity, because they have other pools that have joined that they manage and they're one entity. Like there's the one in Southwest Ohio that they have, and that's one entity. So you won't be the first time they brought a pool in. I know you're not all gonna be independent, so yeah, not even thinking I check now, I think I remember the conversation, yeah. You're one entity with them.
One entity.
One entity.
So, but
One-
on, and I know this is getting into the weeds on the technical stuff, but on the billing side, we're still gonna be getting bills from MedBin, we're still gonna
Correct.
be depositing into our Heritage Bank account, which is where our current reserves are, and then Chris or I will be cutting a transfer to
Correct.
their account for the premiums.
Yeah, I think we discussed that the last meeting, that's right. You would still continue to do your banking as they would, and then would create a transfer between that account and the JHP account.
Right, because my biggest concern,
You still hold your reserves in your
right,
bank.
there was never any question that we held our reserves. My concern was just cutting off the cash flow into the reserves. So, for instance, if Jefferson says your premiums are going to be up 2% next year, and I know that's a really low number, but let's just go with it. 2% next year. If the board decided we were going to do 3%, we would still have that 1% flowing into our reserves.
Correct.
And then we would just be sending JHP the premium check for 2%. So our reserve would continue to
Correct.
grow and breathe and live and function and do its thing. If they're billing each of us individually and all of us are sending our premiums to JHP directly, our reserve gets cut off from future cash flow. And so the only new money that goes into that reserve will be any interest that we earn on it. And then at the same time, you know, we're transferring money to them to hold down future costs. We're
Your first
transferring
description is
money.
the accurate one. The first way you describe it is the accurate one. Because remember, you can still have new people join your old pool.
Right.
So it's still active, it's still live. Your money, you can still feed money into that if you wish to at your discretion. And you can have people join As a member here rather than a member of the new JHP situation. Okay.
What would be the, sorry, Craig, what would be the incentive for somebody to join us if we're making them pay a join fee, right? Where they could join JHP for no fee, right? And if they waived that, and here it was 10 member, I don't know, you said it's 50 earlier, but here it's 10 members. If they waived that, city of, I don't know, somebody was trying to join last month, I forgot who it was now. Alexandria, thank you. What's the incentive for them to join us? If we're gonna charge them a fee, right, where they can go join JHP and they can get it for free.
Access to your reserve.
Buy down premiums.
And control over premiums.
JHP comes next year and says, your premiums are gonna be increased by 15%. And, you know, everyone here agrees that we only want a 10% increase. And we take 5% from our reserves and then buy down that down. And whomever that new member would be, if they're not part of this group here, then they would keep paying 15%.
You have two assets to look at. You'll have the new asset and you'll have the old asset. And that's true, that's about what you have is the old asset is a valuable thing. And that they may wish to, you know, if a community in this district can afford to join your pool, probably they'd be getting the best of both worlds. But quite honestly, yeah, they pay more upfront, but they get access to this pool and the new pool. And they would still get all the rate caps that we have involved on the budget under the new situation with both assets to offset that. So I mean, a sizable entity, I mean, if an entity could afford it, I hadn't really thought about that until you brought it up. That'd actually be a very advantaged way to join for the future. You still have the caps on your budget, can't pay too much, text the budget, but I now partner on the old assets. And you guys always hold the right to say yes or no to anybody that comes on board.
Like, and that's gonna be a very shrewd person that makes that assessment, right? Like, we had that historical data and from being part of it, they go, our numbers have ultimately stayed fairly flat from inception to today. So that's the push for this move, right? Is we were hoping to get to that 1,000, well, it's been a decade and we're essentially right where we started. And I go, two, you enter a time where we look at, you know, potential significant federal and maybe state funding cuts. This organization could get smaller. We're the biggest member. I go, I don't know what impact that'll have on the cities and the fire departments, but I go, man, we look in the short term and you're like, we might stay flat or we may actually lose staff members. So I go, we're gonna then go further from where we started. So I go, we're actually then starting to move in the wrong direction as opposed to, you know, staying flat. So I go, another reason for that move to the Jefferson Health Pool, given how conservative of a group we are, just goes ahead and goes, hey, right now everything's fine. We don't need to make any decision right now, to be very candid, and probably be just okay. But this is us being proactive and going, you know what? Just in case, I'd rather have that life raft with me in the car as I'm going across the bridge than not have it and wish I would have had it. So I go, that's ultimately the reason for the discussion on this and kind of, you know, the positive reason for the move.
I want to reiterate, because not everyone's heard last time, I said this last time, and you heard it. Our organization there's no financial incentive whatsoever in any sort for you making this move or not making this move to Sherrill Morgan. So I know I mean, because I probably sound like I favor the move to some degree, because I do favor the move, but that doesn't mean that we're not incentivized for that to happen anyway. I'm thinking about the fact that when I'm not here in 15, 20 years from now.
So just briefly, I know we've discussed it last time, but the role that you play in like behind the scenes, I don't know, there's that JHP will take a greater role in that. Is that correct?
If we're still maintaining the bank accounts on our side, if they're billing us, things won't change on our side, which is fine because a couple minutes a day.
Yeah, we've got a good system down for it.
It's not that bad.
I mean, but it's sustainable as well, because again, we're looking as far down that track that we can. And again, I was hoping that would just alleviate a lot of the things that you all are doing behind the scenes.
You know, it's really a function of what happens with the billing and what happens with the reserve account. So if we use up the reserve account over the next 10 years, right, and there is no new reserve account and everything's at JHP, then we won't have anything to do, right? It'll all be JHP, but to the extent that we still have our reserve and to the extent that we're still doing cash in and cash out from the account for premiums, we'll still have to have checks and balances. It's just that POS Pay is gonna be a lot easier because instead of having 850 checks a month to run through POS Pay, we're only gonna run one. You know, it'll be our one check to, you know, JHP, you know, so that helps a lot. You know, a few other questions. I still have a few other technical questions that we can get into in the weeds, but I think the one question everybody has to start asking themselves, and if you think back to remember when we were all fully insured and we were all dealing with Anthem and United Healthcare and Blue Cross, you know, all those people, that sales rep call was the worst call you could ever get in March or in April, because you would get the call and it would be 35%, 40%, you know, whatever the percent was. It was huge, it was horrible. And we would have to go back to our leaders and say, this is what it is. And then we try manically to shop somewhere else and it would be just as bad, right? And we all hated swallowing that. We joined this pool and we haven't had to do that, right? The one downside to this pool is if we have those 3 years in a row that are bad, and we've had a couple, 2 years in a row that were pretty bad. We haven't gone 3 yet. And then we had a really great year that made up for it, but that's luck. If we ever got into the situation where we needed to go back to our individual jurisdictions and ask them for money, do you want to do that? Or do you want to just run out of reserves and have Jefferson Health Plan just give us a number and not have control over our number? Which one of those two situations are you more comfortable standing in front of your legislative body? And so I think that's really the decision is are you comfortable being able to go back to your board and ask them for money if we totally blow this thing up? Or are you willing to let Jefferson Health Plan tell us what our rates need to be if we ever got into the position where we did not have the reserves to change it to what we want?
They have said that it's not gonna be an absolute what they tell us the number is, that we play a part in that. I mean, I believe them under current leadership situations. I believe them under current leadership.
So then my other technical question is what happens to the HRA account that we have for people that are not able to get onto the specialty drug manufacturer assistance programs? Because right now we're paying that out of our operating account. You know, we transfer money to the other checkbook to make the payment. But that's essentially part of our premiums now, right?
Continues as it is.
Continues as it is. In the 34-page document on page 18, they say for those members that use a PPO that you have to use the PPO they select. And so we still have like Plan 1 still uses that, right? Still, Plan 1 still uses the network.
Yeah, they use MMO.
Okay, so is that gonna force us to move to their?
No, that would continue and they work with MMO, it's one of their networks.
And they're aware of your direct contracting situations and they favor.
Sure. Yeah, I
On the
figured.
same page, 18, the third party administrator, is that?
And then on page 23, they have a 6-part way that they help determine the rates. And one of those is age. The age of the members. And I just had a technical question. Is that currently a part of our factors? Because it's like we've gotten older in the last 10 years.
Yeah, but you also have a lot of cities who have a lot of young police officers and firefighters, and so your demographics are good.
You got a good blend.
And I'm gonna page you again still on page 23.
Okay.
Top of the page, it does say, Mark, this is a little bit of difference of what you were telling me. It says that if we are in a deficit, they expect each member to appropriate the amount stated in that invoice. Now, so is that, and again, I was reading this as the the Carrollton Utilities is signing this, so it's a little bit different if the member is the Northern Kentucky.
It is your totality as the member.
Because you can take that money out of our reserve to make that thing, but, so that was one of my questions, and I was reading it from Carrollton Utilities' perspective.
To your point, though, we ought to bring this to their attention. This document is written as if you were one entity, and you are one entity, but you happen to be a amalgamation of one entity, so we ought to bring that to their attention.
And they also said they would give us several years to pay that if we ever ran into that.
Yes. There's one just note that has nothing to do really so much with this conversation, just point of information. Your current assets, your current reserves, your example earlier, we decided you got a 2 and you want to do a 3 and you put it in that 1%. There is currently no restriction on the level of reserve that you are allowed to build for the future of your health plan. In an account developed for a health plan. So just to note, the only thing we run up against is when an organization gets an extremely adequate reserve, like our Memphis pool, they get nervous about the public image having so much cash on hand. That situation. On the upside, then you have the ability to build as much reserve as you wish to in your old reserve. In your new reserve, you get great adequate reserves, and you have the protection of another government agency saying, oh no, they should have this much money here. It's protecting them. So it kind of insulates you from the taxpayer basis, how much money should we have or should not have. This is another party saying we should have these dollars in this bank.
I have one more, I think, for now, at
If not 10 more, right?
least 30. The term is 36 months. I know you all were just talking about 24th. We want to sure sign this thing that reads how they told us to do last time. So
It's 6 months out.
Well,
I think this says 36.
E, page 30.
well, I don't know, did they say 24?
So that is
Or
actually
that.
part of the larger section though, on if the Jefferson Health Plan goes boom. That's part of the, if they terminate the Jefferson
Oh,
Health
yeah.
Plan.
Okay.
So if they terminate Jefferson Health Plan, only members who have been in the plan for 36 months prior to the decision to terminate the plan have access to half of the stop loss pool, for lack of a better term.
So my original question was, Dan, then where's the term at in here that we talked about?
They have always told us 6 months notice.
That's true.
Somewhere.
We can clarify that, but that's my recollection too. There really was no statement of termination period other than 6 months notification.
We would be responsible for claims for run out.
Yes, so 6 months, sure.
We'll clarify that to send an email.
Questions on my side?
I'm just gonna run around the room real quick, see if anybody's.
Jefferson Health Plan would be the new third party administrator.
They would be our stop loss carrier, for lack of a better term.
They're not doing any claims processing.
All that would still be done by MedBin. MedBin would do the processing and send the request to JHP, and JHP would cut the checks.
How much, do they have any limits on how much administrative costs they can have? Sort of, it said all these things that they can be paid for, but didn't say how much they could be paid for. Sort of, you know, they could spend all my money.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They can, although the agreement that they have has $60,000 in it for JHP to do their process.
It's $15.50 per employee per month, which right now, as it stands, equates to $63,612. That's what they gave us this on our last meeting, so. That's the JHP's.
Is the $15.50 per month per member? Is that in the document?
It was in
It was in the
the
prior,
proposal,
yeah, it wasn't in the contract.
yeah.
It's not in the contract.
Shared the last document with me.
And that's part of the reason the numbers balance out is that you're not paying a stop loss premium to HCC anymore. So it's kind of like acts like your membership premium rather than paying HCC stop loss.
Here I am in 1550. Large claim reimbursements. Yeah. Yeah, it's all broken out in their proposal.
How much more expensive are they than just stop? Previously, we had just the stop loss without their part of the administration. How much more expensive are they than paying for the stop loss?
It's pretty much a
That's a
wash.
push.
Yeah, it's pretty much a wash. Today, yeah, today it's pretty much a wash. And I guess that's one of the long-term risks that we'd have to watch as a board.
It is, it's not that's. Right now, because you're joining now, it's not a permanent decision to join JHP. But I've always wondered, JHP is really pretty easy getting in and getting out for a pool. It probably is because it's so big. One loss of one organization or doesn't really hurt it. Normally in pools, even your own, you've got in and outs that are a lot more difficult than JHP. So really, it's just their size is why they can be so, easy about it.
I know they're new to Kentucky, but you all, have you dealt with JHP through one of the other states that you have?
Yes, with Ohio.
Ohio, your experience with them?
It's been really good. That is the example that we talked about a few meetings ago where it's a smaller group, about 50 employees or so. And they had a $10 million transplant on their plan, $10 million. And they ran a pretty big deficit within JHP. I think at one time it was about $1 million. And JHP just gave them pretty reasonable renewals from year to year until they finally dug their way out of that hole. And now they have a surplus. So if they had been self-funded on their own, and a $10 million transplant, I mean, their stop loss would have protected them, but they probably would have gotten, at some point, hit really hard on stop loss, maybe a laser on that person. And it's harder for smaller groups to get stop loss than bigger groups. There just aren't as many carriers in that space. So it was a really, really good thing for them.
So in the short, if that would happen here, we had a $2 million claim, you're where you're at now. It's going to cost you the stop loss problems that you'd have in the current situation where you're probably going to have the $1 million laser, something like that going forward on that. And it's going to cost you that $1 million. The difference is it's going to cost you that $1 million in a 12 to 24 months time frame. Under JHP, it's still going to cost you the $1 million. It's going to cost you the $1 million over years. Put it that way for you. So what saves Sycamore Township was not having to pay that in 1 year. That would have bankrupt the city.
Is there a ceiling then with their stop loss? So right now, our current stop loss is like, you get hit big time. Be the 85,000 plus the 150,000, correct? That would be the specific and the aggregate all at once. But then we're looking at like the following year, that's when we would be impacted the most.
They're not gonna mandate a higher specific deductible or aggregate specific deductible. You can ask them to see a higher one to get your fixed costs down within your premiums. And if it makes sense, just like we do today, we look at other specific options if you're having a really bad renewal and we decide whether or not it's worth the additional risk to get the premium down. And they do, I don't think they ever brought that up, but there is a maximum increase on the rates within Jefferson Health Plan. And I think it's around 35%. I've never seen a 35% with them, but there is a maximum on how much they can raise your rates from year to year.
We're gonna keep going around the room. Judge?
No, I thought your 30,000, that was pretty informational for me because I just get bits and pieces. I have another lady that serves on there for me. good information, and just hearing, I still think that it would be good to keep them here, just as a insurance, that way we can keep our rates down, even though they might be going up on the other one, so. And I'm just we touched on the admin fees, and I guess that the person that's representing this on their board, I guess that would be something he could participate in, or her, as far as approving those type of increases on us for admin fees. Is that correct?
So the way I read the agreement is they have two boards. They have like an assembly, which is kind of like the ed district board. It's like everybody. And then they have what they call a board of directors, which is more like the executive committee. And it's the executive committee that's setting everything. They take stuff back to the assembly to kind of just say yay or nay, but I'm not sure that the assembly, because there's so many members. There's hundreds of agencies across multiple states. I don't know how much impact they have, but I'm sure that if need be, I bet I can talk to.
There you go. Yeah, that's all I had. Thank you.
I just wanted to touch on, so the $15 that is per person in the plan, is that a admin fee that is paid monthly when we pay our?
It's paid as part of your premiums.
Okay, so the premiums will stay at 0 if we choose them, but we'll still have that $15 admin fee added to our monthly.
So instead of having to pay stop loss, so right now your premium is like this big and it's made up of fixed costs, which is like this big, and the fixed costs include your stop loss, and includes Cheryl Morgan, includes MedBen, includes our wellness. It has like bang, 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 a whole bunch of stuff in it. We're just changing out one piece and putting another piece in, and for luckily for us, it washed out.
Instead of paying a premium.
So it's not premium plus, it's just
same money to Jefferson Health. Okay, so that's part of that's 85,000 still.
Correct.
you're plugging out one battery and putting in a new one, right, the same part.
And insurance premiums are gonna be exactly the same as they are now.
As we voted, yeah, so. You're after that? Yeah. But,
Sure, but I mean, that can be a peace of mind for everyone that going forward, at least for this next fiscal year, it's gonna be the same.
Yeah, I answered this already, but I'll ask it again. So now when we're building our reserves, and maybe Craig answered this, I'm not sure which one answered it, but next year, if we have a great year and we pay more in and we got reserves, that reserve is now going to JSP, right? As opposed to ours, is that correct?
it will sit in a account with our name on it at JAP.
Okay.
And that would be the first go-to spot if we had a deficit.
So come out of there first, right? Okay. That's fine.
Yeah, it's still your money and only your money.
If it goes over there instead of.
You just pick up the bank account, it's still your money only.
Now, that's any money left after they pay our claims.
Sure, yeah, I get it.
And after they transfer our stop loss amount to their internal pool fund, which is, you saw that in the document.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. We cannot touch their internal pool. So what we pay to them for stop loss, they get to keep.
Yeah,
Right, and that's how they fund all those great things that they promised to do for us if we go upside down.
yeah, I got it.
Okay, and so if we decide to leave, the money we pay them to that internal pool for stop loss, we don't get back, but we pay HCC now and we don't get it back. So I'm not too concerned about that piece.
Yeah.
Towards the reserves that is left in our name under Jefferson Health, is that an interest bearing account, and then does that interest stay with our money, or is that going into their larger account?
That's a great question. The document says that we are given prorated interest. But they also said that they're allowed to invest it under Ohio revised code. And if they make more money investing it other than just interest, I don't know what happens to them. I agree with you. I don't know what happens. That's a great follow-up question for them. If they're investing the funds and they see, capital appreciation, is that stays with them or does that get shared with us? I bet it stays. I
Assume it stays with them.
I assume it stays with them too, because they have a $225 million internal pool fund, right?
Considering we aren't doing anything further than collecting bank interest,
Right.
It's a moot point.
I mean, that's what we're doing right now, yes.
Couple questions just about our reserves. The reserves that we have now, I know we have just, there's a portion of that that is an interest bearing account, correct? It's like,
Almost all.
so my question would be, we're not gonna pull from that throughout the year, what if we would go with Jefferson Health? So all of that money would then be in an interest bearing account like that entire year? Or at least until premiums, we get our new
Right,
numbers?
our account's pretty steady around $2 million. And so, we cash flow pretty tight. So if we bring in $500,000 a month in premiums, we're gonna spend like $475,000 in claims in a month, give or take, So
I thought we had like 750,000 in interest bearing.
we actually have, so what we have right now is we have $2 million at Heritage. That's in an interest bearing account at 2.5%. It's not tied to anything, so it stays 2.5%. So we're kind of a little under the weather right now in terms of interest that you can probably get out in the real world. But if we were back 3 or 4 years ago, that's better than anything we would have ever gotten pre-COVID. We also have a $250,000 CD at Fifth Third, and that right now is at 3 7/4. We can make that bigger, but I choose to keep it right at that level because that's the FDIC insurance level. So I keep it there for Fifth Third, just kind of as a attaboy for them, for giving us that, because we did move $2 million out of their account to Heritage. And then there is the HRA account, and the HRA account has about $15,000 in it. And that is used to pay for specialty drugs that we cannot get that individual on to a manufacturer assistance program. And those one-time, once a month injections or whatever, those can be $8,000 to $9,000. So we keep that funded at about 15. That there. So
That's basically,
all
I
our money.
just want to know, like, that money will be working for us throughout the entire year.
Yes,
We're paying into JHP, and we're not gonna be withdrawing any money from it through claims or anything. That money's gonna be working and growing.
to the extent that our premiums that we send JHP cover the claims, which they should, we should be fine. Now, there are months we go upside down, but versus premiums, but and I bet they anticipate that. And so they should be able to cash flow that, and then there'll be a true up at some point. Like, they're gonna want us to have a reserve account balance so that they can use that money for those moments when we have more claims than what we brought in premium. We can transfer from our reserves to that to make that work.
That's my next question. Do you know if JHP has a plan for the reserves, again, that we would just have for JHP? Like, here we develop the plan over years. If we had so much, our premiums would be increased by, so many percentage. Do you know if they have that?
Yes, they
plan?
have a reserve policy. They have, certain standards that they use in determining how much a group should have in reserve, and then they get to that point every time. They won't make
Seemed
you-
reasonable. I mean, you've seen that and it seemed reasonable. I mean,
Yes.
they're not gonna ask for everything right up.
Okay. Mhm. And once you get to a certain point, then they give you the option of taking moratoria. So if you are sufficiently reserved, then you can say to JHP, and I don't know how functionally this would work with this board, but we want to take a moratorium this month, meaning you don't pay them anything.
Or you continue to build the
Yeah.
reserves. I mean, it's all
Or
still
you
your
can
money.
just keep paying. Yeah, it's up to you. So like in the example of Sycamore Township, not only did they make up for that $1 million deficit, but they also have taken multiple moratoria. Where they've said, yeah, we'd rather use our, health insurance premiums for some other purpose this month, so we're taking a premium holiday.
What's good about their reserve policy is as an independent third party developing a policy that's in your best interest, that if some future board a decade from now was not as disciplined as we made to follow that reserve policy, because it's all your money anyhow. You're keeping your money. So it just disciplines that board to make sure that adequate funding is taking place for future care. Employees.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on, so you had mentioned that if we had a month where we were upside down, we would transfer money from that pool to Jefferson.
If they requested it. Yeah.
What if it's a new member? What do they do, the new members that aren't part of the 17 entities that are part of this group with that? Because that's not their pool, that's our pool.
They would have to deal with JHP and whatever JHP's internal policies are on dealing with that
So they're
situation.
not qualified for that pool at all. then.
Correct.
What JHP is gonna keep your funding constant throughout a 12-month period. It doesn't matter if you're upside down in a particular, and you can be upside down 6 months in a row and you're gonna pay those same premiums. Now, it's gonna be reflected in your renewal the subsequent year, but once you're given your renewal with them, that's it. That's what you're paying, unless you take a moratorium.
So they're not gonna come month to month?
No,
Okay.
I just see that because I watch the bank account,
yeah,
I can see that,
So what, our premiums are gonna stay the same until renewal? And then-
Yes.
Then they're gonna say, hey,
and you get a monthly financial statement from them and you'll be able to see where you are in terms of how much you paid in and how much has gone out.
Yeah, right now, you don't have a guarantee your premiums will stay the same month to month. But what I mean by that, you don't have a guarantee, meaning that if the $1 million claim hit and it was due in 60 days, you're gonna wipe out your reserves, you're probably gonna come back and do a call or change your premiums. Yeah, so you end up with a premium guarantee, that's a real premium guarantee. That you're gonna have to pay them back at some point for those dollars, but then it's over time and it's not all at once. And it's a real guarantee, so it literally is guaranteeing your budget for the period of the budget year.
With that, we've been at this an hour. Does anybody else have any questions or concerns they would need to bring up? If not, I guess we can go and start, taking it through. Okay, so we're gonna do this the way we always do it. I'm just gonna entertain a motion to authorize the pool to join the Jefferson Health Plan. So yes, join Jefferson, no, don't join Jefferson. And we'll just do it real quick by show of hands, and if it looks close, then we'll do roll. Okay, so all the entities in favor of joining Jefferson Health Plan, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's all we have, because at this point, discussion on me is not needed. Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Cheers.
I've been given directives to say that.
No, I figured that, but.
it's such a history here.
From what she heard last time, she was like, no, saying yes.
It's always good to have one dissenting vote.
Last time it was like really tight.
She didn't get to hear anything, so that's.
You did good. Sorry?
I know. I am too.
Good.
Wait, that was it.
Oh, yeah, sure. There's,
They're probably like.
Hold on, so I could jump on all that.
like. Okay, that's how we.
Yes.
We